How do we fix everything? How do we fix our broken country? What do we do? What do we need to do? We've looked in so many different places. And some people quite rightly say we need to come together. We need to be in unity. I would agree with that. But how do we do that? How do we achieve that? We've tried that before. And because of people that have either massive egos or people that just absolutely believe things that are totally opposed to what we believe, it all falls apart. So what do we do? What do we do to fix things? What do we do to make things right? Well, I'll tell you what we need. We need a conspiracy. And you might hear that and you'll be going, what's he talking about? We need a conspiracy. I'm not talking about a criminal conspiracy. I'm not talking about a conspiracy to overthrow everything that's good. That's what the lunatics that we're up against have. No, what a conspiracy is. Conspiracy means to breathe together. We as a movement need to be breathing together. In other words, we need common cause. We need a common set of values. We need somebody to articulate exactly what we believe and why we believe it. And I want to make one main suggestion in this very short video. And many of you know that I've said this sort of stuff before, but I think it needs to be said again. What we need to get back to are what are called Judeo-Christian values. And what does that mean? It means ideas and beliefs based on the Old Testament and the New Testament. Judeo is the Old Testament, Christian is the New Testament. And of course, it is one combined belief system. And I'm not talking about everybody becoming Bible-believing Christians. But what I'm talking about is people realizing that everything that's good in this country, and I mean everything that's good in this country, comes from that source. And of course, people can pick holes in this verse and that verse and all the rest of it. But the overall thrust of the entire Bible is about this. It's a love story. And to coin that Beatles song, the phrase from the Beatles song, all you need is love, that is very true. That's all we need. It really is. If everybody loved each other, there wouldn't be a problem. You say, Richard, have you turned into some sort of hippie? Are you smoking something? No. I'm being an absolute realist. An absolute realist. And Jesus said it like this in the New Testament. And he was quoting from the book of Deuteronomy. I believe it was Deuteronomy. And he said this, when he was asked what the greatest commandment was in the whole of the Bible. He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And then he said the second part of that commandment, or the second commandment to obey, is love your neighbour as yourself. And when I'm talking about loving God, I know many people that watch my channel are atheists, and don't tune out, because this is important. This isn't just for Christians. If you're an atheist, can I just humbly suggest that you look at God as he's portrayed in the Bible, as Jesus Christ, as the suffering servant, as the man who was God and died for the sins of the whole world. That's the story of the Bible, is a story of love, of God's love for man and man's love for God. So I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm asking you to fall in love with the idea of redemption and of hope and of faith and of love. That great verse that's always read at weddings. Faith, hope and love. And what does it go on to say? The greatest of these is love. That's what the Bible and the scripture is all about. That's what our country needs. And I'm not talking about people saying I'm a Christian, I believe everything, I sign up to everything. All I'm saying is that idea of, and you can sum up even shorter, love God and love everybody else. And like I say, if you're from a different religious background, if you're an atheist, that doesn't matter. You can still buy into these principles and say, yes, I can sign up to that. That idea of loving my neighbour and loving the idea of God as I find him in this book. So that is actually the solution to the problems of our country. It really is. If every single one of us lived out what we're told to do in this book, and the problem is that none of us do, even those of us who have claimed to be Christians, we all fail and fall and stagger. And that's the other thing. The other thing when it comes to the law of love is the idea of forgiveness and letting go of things. Do you know, in our movement, there's too much infighting. People talk about unity. Good luck. We've been there. We try to bring people together. You get all sorts of nonsense coming against you. We've all been trying to do it for many years. And it's because none of us have actually lived out what's in this book. And what I find, if you look at societies, you look at cultures, the further they move away from the law of love, and that's what I'm going to call this, the law of love, the further people move away from the law of love, which is it's in the Jewish Old Testament and it's in the Christian New Testament. It's right the way through both books of the Bible, if you like. This course is a lot more than 2 books, but the Old Testament and the New Testament. It's right the way through it. And the further man moves away from the teachings of this book, the more chaotic everything gets in his life, and I've experienced that myself personally, but also in the life of the nation. There's a verse in the book of Proverbs that says the wicked shall be turned into hell and all the nations that forget God. Now, I know I'm being a bit preachy today, right? And I know a lot of you might not like that. Well, this is my platform. I'm just telling you what I believe. And I would say if our movement even said, okay, we'll do the love our neighbour bit. We'll do the 10 Commandments bit. We'll do the Sermon on the Mount bit. Or we'll try our best to. And we'll base our movement and what we believe on those values. I think that would be transformative. And again, I know I'm talking to many, many people of different religious backgrounds and none. And I am not trying to convert you. What I'm saying is, we've tried everything else. Everything else has failed. Why not give the law of love a go in your personal lives and as a country, as a movement, as communities, and say, right, that's right, that makes sense. That makes sense. Looking after your neighbour instead of trying to get one over on him. Putting others above yourself. Man, it's hard. You know, it is really impossibly hard to do all those things. But if you do them, or even if you attempt to do them, you'll see change. And of course, I believe in God and I believe the whole thing. My problem's always living it, not believing it. I believe it 100%. Living it's a different story. But the point I'm making is, if as a movement we start employing these principles, and it's the principle of love, I believe we'll see massive change. And that doesn't mean you get soft. That doesn't mean you become a pacifist. That doesn't mean you're not willing to fight for your country if there needs be. That doesn't mean you just lie back and let the world roll over you like a steamroller. That's not Christianity. That's not faith, and that's not Judeo-Christian values or heritage. And if you take time to read the book, you'll know that. But that's my thought for today. Let's try the law of love. Let's try loving our neighbours. And people say, who's your neighbour? Everybody's your neighbour. Does that mean that you let everybody come into your country? Absolutely not. Because if you destroy your country with cultures that are totally opposed to the message of love, and when we think about Islamism, communism, globalism, those messages are totally opposed to what I'm suggesting today. They're completely the opposite to the law of love. But I tell you now, if we did this as a movement, if we did this as individuals, our lives would be changed, relationships would be redeemed, our families would be put back together, all those strained relationships would come together. And that's not just on a family basis or on a close personal relationship basis. that would spread out throughout the whole country, and it would transform and change our country. People need hope. And what I'm suggesting today, whether you believe any of this or not, try it and put it into practice and see what happens. You'll also find it's impossible to do, but that's another story. You need help. We all need help. We all need massive help. So let's try the law of love. Let's see what happens. And then, when we've tried the law of love, then we can start building community. Then we can start building a movement that is unified, because it'll be unified in love. And I know you might think I'm crazy. I've tried it the other way. When I started in this movement, I had very, very strong faith. When I tried doing things the other way, doing things through deliberately not speaking about my faith and not speaking about Christianity, things fell apart for me. So I know I'm not talking as someone who's never experienced any issues. When you don't live this life, things go wrong. When you do live this life, things go well. And that's what I suggest for the movement. And also that everybody in the movement that's in the genuine movement, I'm not talking about the Nazis and the lefties and all the rest of it, people who are genuinely in our movement, let's put petty squabbles and differences aside and let's start loving each other in the Christian sense of loving each other, talking about looking out for each other, helping each other. Because there's a lot of people who need help, even in our movement. And that's what I'm espousing. That's what I'm suggesting today. Have a think about it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I know a lot of you will be giving me grief for various different reasons. That's okay. All I'm doing is making suggestions. I am a failed man who's just suggesting something that I know works, because it's worked before in my life. It works in culture, society, and nations. It never doesn't work. And it's just loving God and loving everybody else. Very, very simple, very, very basic. No, I'm not a hippie. I believe this is a very, very hard road to travel. But if we can do it, then we've got a good chance of saving our country and seeing a lot of people in our country set free from all sorts of difficulties and problems. See you all soon.